Arch of Palmyra is also known as the Arch of Baal. Now, this was a triumphant arch, so the first thing we have to do is learn what the heck a triumphal arch is. The emperor would ride through the arch on their way to their temple to dedicate and sacrifice to the gods to thank them for assisting them in their murderous warlike victories. So this definitely had a political and religious connotations.
To be here with this beautiful thing.
Intersection perhaps between our belief in what is right and our power to enact it.
The creator of the arch that stands behind me here, that provides means for bringing cultural heritage assets back to life in ways that never existed before. Own extraordinary rebirth from violence and destruction. But that same DNA is present in this arch. This is also the product of the classical era, and it reminds us that what happens here and what our honored guests do every day. Just here from that, what happens here is connected to this ancient tradition that has survived throughout the millennia. Because there's something about it that's worth preserving, just like it's worth preserving the objects that embody the history of that.
Hi, and welcome to our Bible study channel.
Energy. Energy. You cannot fuck with this. Energy. You cannot fuck with this energy. Love the doodles in the steps. All of those who are listening. Don't miss the message, judging you. You cannot fuck with this energy. Energy.
These are videos that go pretty in depth. First thing you should probably do is pause and read our 12 rules for reading biblical text. And if you don't like the 12 rules or you don't understand the 12 rules, well, I don't have time to explain them all. Go back to the book that I wrote and uploaded on this channel, which takes you through the entire arc and how we made these quote-unquote 12 rules as a framework of what we found after 7 years digging meticulously and carefully through the text. So if you're confused, go do that. If I refer back, well, that's probably because we actually post these things in order. So they're all done in series. And if you jump in at the middle of a series without any schema or background knowledge, and you get all pissed off, well, that's also not our problem. This is a group where we go line by line, scroll by scroll through the text. Warning, we are not language sensitive, so if you can't handle some cussing, it's not the place for you. We also do not endorse nor approve of pretty much any mainstream theology. So if you're looking for that, also definitely not the place for you. We do a video about the characters that we use in our Bible study series. And the reason we do this is sort of so that they can kind of get in your head. So we do have a video explaining why we chose the people we chose and how their sort of energy characteristics go along with the biblical characters to modernize it for people so they know what the heck we're reading. Clearly, the Roman Church was not doing their job and looking for the lost sheep of the reunited House of David. So that's what we're doing, okay? We're taking that away from them because they screwed it up. The brilliant rabbis also down there in Babylon are also not looking for the lost sheep of the reunited kingdom of David. So you're not going to hear, let's follow Rome. And you're not going to hear, let's follow the rabbis. on this channel. Because, you know, sorry, not sorry, but the Bible wasn't actually written for the corrupt Levitical priesthood post-Babylon and Persia to read it through their little janky books. And it also wasn't written to be read through the eyes of pagan 4th century church fathers. So we're not doing that either. You guys can both have a seat. Oddly enough, the Bible also wasn't written to be read through the eyes of some dumbass scholars with pieces of paper that say they're smarter than everyone, but have never seen a Davidic covenant in their life. Not written for them either. You know who it's written for? It's written for the reunited house of David, who are actually in covenant and are actually the sheep. That's who it's written for. That's why nobody else can understand what the heck's going on. What you are going to hear is what you're supposed to hear, which is, let's follow the king, and let's get started.
So, we are going to war.
Hi, everyone. Happy Sabbath. Okay. We are going to knock this one out, and I'm going to move fast, and I'm going to talk fast. So, keep up. If you do not have the background knowledge for this, I am so sorry. Go on back to the series videos, because I will be referring to many of the videos and series that we've already done. So this is one where it's kind of you got to buckle up a little bit for this one, and slow down and backtrack any of my information if you want to. And let's get moving here. Okay, so this triumphal arch was brought, if you saw that little video of the politicians talking, in, I don't know, 2016, 2017, 2015, somewhere back there. ISIS destroyed and took sledgehammers to the Arch of Palmyra. The Arch of Palmyra is also known as the Arch of Baal. Now, this was a triumphant arch, so the first thing we have to do is learn what the heck a triumphal arch is. All right, in the olden days, all right, these triumphal arches, they were erected anytime one of the emperors, kings, and queens had a wartime victory. The emperor would ride through the arch on their way to their temple to dedicate and sacrifice to the gods to thank them for assisting them in their murderous warlike victories, because most of the gods were all about, war. So they would go and do that, hunting and war. Now, passing through this arch, it actually symbolized a vibrational sanctification process, if you will, as you're approaching the temple. So you're sort of leaving the old reality behind and going in to the vibrational reality of your favorite deity, and absorbing the energy before you went into the temple to sacrifice. So it's sort of like, I call it the baptism of the arches. Okay. So this definitely had a political and religious connotations. This represents freedom. And probably not the good time that you're thinking of, but freedom and victory. Freedom meaning I get to do whatever the fuck I want, and we won. Okay, and conquering other lands, so all that good stuff. Now, this arch from Palmyra was actually rebuilt because ISIS broke it. And they tried to say, we're bringing the Arch of Baal, and we're going to do a world tour with it. But then everybody flipped their shit and said, why are these people bringing the Arch of Baal around the world? What's going on here? And so they had to stop, and then they changed the headlines of all the newspapers, and you can see it written both ways. It's really funny. Go on to the internet and the Wayback Machine, and they changed it and said, okay, don't tell them about the ball thing. We don't want to talk about Baal. So what we're going to do is we're going to call it a relic. It's a historical and archaeological treasure, and it's got all this heritage to it. And that's why we are touring with it, they made a what do you call those? Like a 3D printer replica of this lovely arch leading to the Temple of Bel. B-E-L, Bel. I call it Baal, but you'll see that in a minute. But strictly speaking, it was the Temple of Bel, Bel. And so they recreated this lovely arch, and they trotted it around New York City, London, Dubai, Florence, Italy, and did really magic tricks with the, the UN and at the G7 conference. So, it's seems to be pretty important for all those governments and people. Also, passing through the arch after a victory, it imbued in you that divine authority that we always talk about. Is it biblical? Well, I don't really want to go too deep into the Bible today. We haven't the time. But in 1 Kings 18, I always give you a Bible verse, so you can meditate on this one. Now, Kings was a time in the Bible that was after the pandemonium, right when we didn't have any kings, and it was called the period of the judges, but it wasn't like good judges. Go back to, the King David thing. So it's when you've got King Solomon, King David, King Saul. All of our kings are ruling. And in the time of kings, Elijah was one of our prophets, and he was the dude that always fought the people who were worshiping Baal. Okay. So Elijah went before the Baal worshiping people and said, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord," take a look at that word, Lord, capital L-O-R-D, "is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." And the people said nothing. We'll come back to that quote in a while. So for now, just take that for how you read it. Then we'll read a little more. We'll peel back the layers of that onion in upcoming sessions. But for now, how long are you going to waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. And the people said nothing. So we're talking about the arch enemy of God, and he actually comes up a lot in the Bible. Now, where the heck is Palmyra? There where this arch leading to the temple was to begin with. Well, Palmyra was an ancient, beautiful, fantastic metropolis city. And it was in Syria, north of Damascus. And it was kind of where the Persians, those pesky Persian bloodlines, and the Romans collided after, of course, we're talking over thousands of years in these areas, and empires keep changing hands because it's all the same fucking land. But Palmyra, the time in history we're talking about with the arch and the Temple of Bel, is where the Persian bloodlines and the Romans meet, right there in Palmyra. The city actually, if you rewind like thousands of years, it was actually built up by King Solomon, who was the son of King David, because their empires, they had influence on many cities outside of just Jerusalem. And it was strategically located on two of the most important trade routes in the ancient world. So we had lots of different trading partners, exchanges of ideas, and we gained considerable wealth. It was right on the Silk Road. It was one of the major trade routes. So, because of its convenient location, it had a major Persian influence. And then, of course, thousands of years later, a Roman influence, and the two of those clash. Palmyra was also home to many temples to many gods, and it littered the landscape with all the places where you could worship the god of your choice, sort of like a shopping mall. Now, the Palmyra Arch led straight to the Temple of Bel. Bel is also known as Marduk or Baal, okay? And Marduk and Baal, those can be traced all the way back to thousands of years BC. But the cella, which is the inside part, was housing the deity in the very middle chamber where you'd also find the sacrifice altar. Now, that word C-E-L-L-A, that just means inner holy of holies, like the inner temple, okay, where the actual deity lived, and that's where the sacrificial altar was. Okay, Baal or Baal was thought to be the creator, the Lord and Master of the universe, the leader of the gods. He was also called Zeus, Jupiter, Enlil, and Marduk, and always hung out with the sun god, the moon god, and he's the one way back when that defeated Tiamat. You might remember we talked about Tiamat way back in like Genesis intro or Genesis 1, where God was hovering over the waters. And we did an ancient Mesopotamian Tiamat thing from thousands and thousands of years ago. All right, let's see. No, I want to stay in this meeting. Thank you very much. Okay, let's pop over to here. I kind of want to show you. This is what it looked like. Now, these are these giant columns that sort of make up the main road. Okay. And there is the actual arch. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Okay. This right here, I want to show you this. This is called, what the hell is this called? This is a tetrahedron or something. Tetrapylon. And basically what it means is this is an area and that they would put these things in the middle of roads that intersected. Okay. So it would lead you into a certain way, and they would put, the nobility or the rulers, the governors, the client kings that we talked about back in Saul of Tarsus. I think we talked about client kings, governors instituted by Rome, those types of things to sort of oversee their territories, or, diplomats and really important governor people. They would put their statues into these four things, and it sort of served as a way to, lead you from one place to another. It's a crossroads, if you will. And unfortunately, this crossroads, when you stood in the middle of this crossroads, it didn't show you the Temple of Baal, because this was like, this was the main street. Okay. So these main streets were like flanked with these giant columns. And unfortunately, when you got to this tetrahoo thing back here, it didn't give you a good view of the Temple of Baal. Okay, and you can see it a little better here. I'm going to go back one more. There you go. See how these streets would line with these? And it would lead you to a certain place. So then here in the middle, they would kind of give you this meeting spot where all roads would meet. But you have these giant columns flanking the roads with all of these important things on the sides of them. Okay. So this wasn't exactly lined up with the Temple of Baal. They didn't like that. So they wanted to build this giant arch so that when you got to the arch in this curvature in the road, it would lead you and show you straight to the temple. So the angle of looking through this arch that they would build, it sort of fixed the degrees of the roads leading to the temple. So it was like a really important archaeological thing to kind of trick the eye so that it wasn't fucked up. So you could walk right through this arch here and you would be able to see the Temple of Baal. And these little flanks off to the side sort of played, a visual trick. So it kind of framed the temple for you that wasn't previously framed. Okay. So these are our archways. Okie dokie. They like to have their shit framed. All right. And there is our archway. Is that lovely? That's our magical arch. All right, let's jump back.
Ironies in this story here today. And the first irony is that it would be the monumental arch of Palmyra, everyone. And what it represented, in a way, was the first Enlightenment. The Enlightenment at the time, the ideals in philosophy at that time, are in many ways, as Roger said, what we see around us here. Thank 3D printing for the breakthroughs in terms of now being able to replicate history.
All right, well done. Can we get a photograph of you two gentlemen of the arch?
Here with this beautiful, beautiful thing.
Oh, why do I always do that, you guys? I don't know why I always do that. Somebody's pushing the wrong thing. Okay, can you see me now? I think you can see me now. Now, I just want to give you a quick reminder. I do not subscribe to the 5 solas. Solas are sola gratia, sola fide, sola Christus, sola Deo gloria, whatever the fucking sola scriptura. These are the Protestant Reformation. Okay, what these state is you are saved by grace alone, faith alone, Christ alone. Everything goes to the glory of God alone, and you're only allowed to look at scripture. Nothing out of scripture. Now, what they got right, okay, was the 4th one, God alone. I would love to say Jesus alone, but it's not. Jesus expects you to actually do something, not just believe something. And you can only have grace and faith, and you're not supposed to do anything, just believe stuff. I don't go with that. And go back through, you can go through any video basically and see how I break that down. But mostly the Constantine one will get you there. And then they got the glory to the glory of God alone. But the other problem is sola scriptura is their entire philosophy had to only and always revolve around biblical truths. But the person that held the key to the biblical truths, of course, wasn't you. It was whomever told you what the biblical truth was. And don't you dare go look at history or language studies or any other books to verify that information, because that would be bad and demons will come and eat your face off. However, the Book of Enoch, Jasher, and Jubilees I refer to quite often because they are biblically endorsed. What do I mean by biblically endorsed? Well, the Sola Scriptura has, Jude quoting Enoch and Jesus and his apostles, along with many of the prophets. So, yeah, they used those books. So if they're good enough for them, they're good enough for me. They're also Dead Sea Scroll endorsed. And the people for about 100 years before them, they also utilized Enoch, Jasher, and Jubilees, and several others. The only place it's forbidden is the actual church. And because they don't like other books, they diminish them, mock them, and devalue them. But, I threw out the whole 5 solas anyway, or at least 4 of the 5, as they're modernly interpreted. So I don't give a shit. And we're going to go to Enoch next and learn a little bit about ancient geometry. I'm going to be quiet and just let this man speak. It's a lot, so get out your notebooks.
I think one of the ways to look at this is go back in time as far as we can and have a look at the early evidence of grids. One excellent place to look is the classic Book of Enoch, which was only rediscovered in 1773. It'd been in obscurity, been totally lost for at least 1500 years, and it was James Bruce who discovered a version of it in Ethiopia. And Enoch, who was the great-grandfather of Noah, describes the fall of the Watchers, or the angels, who came down from supposedly Mount Hermon, and they fathered the Nephilim with human women and so forth. And
so these are not the good angels. These are the bad angels, just throwing that in there.
In his book, he describes visits in flying machines, going to different parts of the world, having visionary experiences with these.
So that would be your advanced technology that the demons always bring with them.
Almost like light beings, you could call them. And he describes that. But one of the passages in it, and there's a few similar to this, having read the Book of Enoch quite thoroughly. This is a really interesting one because it almost describes a great survey of the planet. I'll just read this to you. And I saw in those days how long cords were given to the angels. They took themselves wings and flew and went towards the north. And I asked an angel, saying unto him, why have they taken cords and gone off? And he replied, they've gone to measure, and these measures shall reveal all the secrets of the depths of the earth. Here is very, very interesting. So if you imagine you have these going on, which are imperceptible to the human ear, plus earthquakes, volcanoes, moving water, the whole wave system of the planet, high force winds, some crazy symphony could organize.
Notice when he said they gave a silver cord to the gods and they would stretch it out and go and measure the planet. Okay, now he's talking about the waves of energy, but the measuring the planet thing, put a pin in that, because you remember our bird dude, we've got Thoth and we've got the other bird dude with Nimrod bird dude that plucked the eyes out. Yeah, you will see him in some ancient Egyptian art, holding over his head with his arms spread out a cord of some kind, like he seems to have a measuring tape in his hands. So put a pin in the bird guy, in the measuring the universe verse from the book of Enoch. Just, we're not getting there today, but keep a pin in that one. Remember the bird with the eye. Okay, that whole thing.
Organize the energies of the earth into a coherent, vibrating geometric grid. And this may have been what the ancients somehow understood. They might have tuned into this. So here we have the 5 Platonic solids. And here we have them represented over 5,000 years ago, carved in stone in northern Scotland, which is bizarre in its own right. This is thousands of years before Plato was even born. And here are some illustrations of 5 of them that actually represent the 5 different Platonic solids. And it's believed that the old North Pole, according to magnetic testing within rocks, was actually in Hudson Bay. So we applied this, me and John Martineau applied the grid system, the Becker and Hagen's grid system, to where the old pole would be, which would be within Hudson Bay up in Canada. And what we found was suddenly many ancient sites, extremely ancient sites like Göbekli Tepe, Baalbek, Nabta Playa, Easter Island, other places, suddenly fitted in to this particular.
Okay, he just named off a couple places there, and I'm going to slow that down for you. He said Baalbek, which is a major site in Lebanon, spelled Baalbek. He also said Göbekli Tepe, which is an area in South Turkey. We hit this one quickly. You may or may not have seen when I was doing geography of the region, and it is where the arguably one of the very first civilizations ever is, and it happens to be right next to the assumed site of Noah's Ark, a site where you've got giant Nimrod worshiping stuff, and perhaps one of the 2 locations that's argued to be the Garden of Eden. So it's Göbekli Tepe, that I can't ever fucking say, that I will be visiting in Turkey, hopefully, God willing, this spring. So he just rattled off a bunch of those important sites, and I think it's worth hearing that again.
Göbekli Tepe, Baalbek, Nabta Playa, Easter Island, other places, suddenly fitted in to this particular version of the grid. This is pure speculation, but it's interesting nonetheless if you're interested in the placement of ancient sites around the planet. Now, the Earth's magnetic field, this is intriguing. It's an interesting anomaly because it's just not talked about. It's not, people aren't interested in it, but it has a huge effect on us. And on the surface of the planet, there are fault lines, earthquake epicenters, geomagnetic forces, natural electric or telluric currents. And these are all affecting us every day. And the ancients knew how to work with this, and they understood it. They saw the Earth as like an energy system combined with the rays of the sun, obviously. And
I'm sorry, what? The rays of the what? Oh, the sun. Let's remember the sun. We can't forget the sun. The sun is all important.
The Earth itself is thought to derive from convection in the outer iron-rich core, combined with the stirring caused by the Earth's rotation. The inner core of the Earth also rotates slightly faster than the rest of the planet. It's like playing catch-up all the time. So there's kind of movement and energy constantly happening. It also takes a daily beating when it's struck by gusts of solar wind, which you can see in the northern lights. It strengthens in the morning as we rotate into the sun, and weakens every night. And these energetic lines, these magnetic.
Oh, it strengthens when the sun rises. Imagine that. And then it weakens when the sun sets. Isn't that interesting? I hope your brain's making connections to our last video series.
Magnetic flux lines and telluric currents get charged up, and often they charge through the landscape every day, and that's what wakes you up in the morning. It's not necessarily sunlight. It's actually these underneath you there's this constant movement of energy. This just shows you the magnetic flow lines of the planet and how they move around the planet. I came back out the chamber, and I was sick again. I got up to the surface and I felt sick again. So it's almost like some kind of neutralizing energy, like the pyramid power was kind of sending this energy down into this subterranean chamber, and I was completely well for the time I was there. And we know that pyramids do have these particular effects. There's been tests done recently in Russia and Ukraine, and they've been building these fiberglass pyramids which are based upon the golden section, much like the Great Pyramid, or these are much more taller and elongated. And these are some of the results they were getting. They would find that water wouldn't freeze, increased strength of concrete, ionized plasma rising up above the pyramid. Seeds, again, were getting 20 to 100% growth increase. Increased resistance to mice with salmonella and tumor, similar to me. I had like serious food poisoning. I got completely well when I was under the Great Pyramid, and increases in yield and so forth. And so we're finding that even just a simple pyramid construction does have these incredible effects. And I think that principle was applied everywhere on the planet. This is a quote from Paul Devereaux, who basically says the same thing, that ancient sites of power were sometimes found and sometimes deliberately constructed to mimic or enhance what could be found in nature. In either case, the forces of the natural world were used, and they were used for a variety of purposes, such as the promotion of fertility and for healing, but the overriding purpose was the need to have gateways through which contact with spirit could be achieved. In the ancient world, there were certain people who knew how to work with the physical world in order to create access to the spiritual. So there's like a combination of different things at play here. The same principles that would enhance your seeds and grains, and this has been tested scientifically, would enhance your brain chemistry and affect your different glands in your brain and give you out-of-body and visionary experiences. And so let's move on. Let's look at some other aspects of the Earth grid itself.
Okay, so grid lines are a thing, and they're now actually studying them. We're going to go ahead and take a peek here. If you can see, okay, this is the colonnade. This is the main street with all of those pillars. Okay, and you can see over here, we've got our tetrapylon right here in the middle. That's those 4 columns of 4 columns, right? That they would put their important political figures, statues, and busts in, and it would lead you to, all of the major sites were usually off of this center, and then your road would continue. But unfortunately, this road was built so that it didn't actually hit the temple. So we have a curvature in the road here, and in order to play that eye trick, so that when you're coming down like this through the main road with all of those columns, you would hit the Palmyra arch or the monumental arch or the arch of Bell, and it would switch you to go right here to the entrance of the temple. Now, what's interesting, the temples in the old days, this is it looks square, but I believe asterisk means I'm not sure, but I believe this actually, the excavation makes it look kind of wonky here. It's actually a longer rectangle than you're seeing in this picture. I think it's more rectangular shaped than square shaped. And oddly, it does go from east to west, and that was all of the temples were made from east to west, or excuse me, all of the we'll call them demon temples, were made east to west, because guess why? Oh, wait, think hard. Why would they make their temples east to west? Oh, yeah, the grid lines. Okay, they were placed on grid lines, and they were working with the lines that were coming from the magnetic fields, and the sun energizes in the morning and rises in the east and sets in the west. Strangely enough, though, Baal's temple, well, yeah, he didn't have his temple with the entrance. They always entered, not always, clearly, but in ancient Mesopotamia, they usually entered into the front of the temple, and the front of the temple was on the east because that's where the sun rose. because you didn't want to enter in the back end of the temple. That was bad because that was the chaos destruction nighttime when the sun is setting and the energies go down. But strangely, in this particular Bell temple, they had their entrance over here in the west. So they were entering through the underworld. Yeah, they were entering through the underworld part of the temple. So just fun fact. So when you came through the Palmyra arch or the monumental arch or the arch of Baal, what you would do is you would see straight into the western entrance of the Baal temple. It would divert your eyes here to the entrance of the underworld. So there's that. Just throwing it out there. Just so many coincidences, aren't there? I know, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. Now let's move back to this girl. This girl, the first thing I notice, well, she's got a little helper there, but look right over her shoulders. She seems to have a bird. These people really love their birds and their sons. Yes, they do. So who is this lady? Well, this lady, we're talking the 200s here, and this was Queen Zenobia, and she was queen in this Syrian region of Palmyra, okay, north of Damascus, where the Persian bloodlines and the Roman bloodlines meet. So we're in 200 AD now. So this is, 200 years after Jesus, pretty much the mid to late 200s. So almost Constantine's time, but not quite. And her name means one whose life derives from Zeus. Well, put a pin in that because we're going to remember who Zeus is. Zeus. Remember that name. We'll get back to Zeus in a minute. So she gets her lifeblood from Zeus. She was also known as a hunter, and her religion, we think, was Manichaeism. Manichaeism, we're not sure how to say it, but this was a really interesting religion because it was her goal. Of Manichaeism is this, the goal of this religion was to combine and surpass all of the ancient religions. So she got around. This Manichaeism religion sought to integrate, ready? The mythologies, stories, worship systems, and beliefs of Christianity, Zoroastrian, Buddhism, Marcionism, remember Marcion, all Hellenistic and Rabbinic Judaism, Gnostic movements, ancient Greek religions, Babylonian and other Mesopotamian religions, and all of the mystery cults of the time. So she wanted all of those and included in one religion, which is this Manichaeism religion. She didn't invent that religion, but they claim her. And when I say she got around, although she stayed, her empire was this area of Syria, she helped to rebuild the Colossi of Memnon, which we'll be seeing all the way down in Luxor, Egypt. And her influence went all through Persia, up through Turkey, and anywhere the Silk Road went. Because remember, she was in the middle of the Silk Road. She spoke about 4 or 5 different ancient languages and loved to assist people in various cults and demon worships to build their temples and support them, so that, anyone who the Romans snubbed, she'd be like, no problem. We will just help you out, because she wanted support from everybody. Okay, let's talk about the temples that she built with this wonderful philosophy, enlightened philosophy, as our politicians so graciously pointed out to us when they unveiled this arch that led to the temple. So remember, the Palmyra Arch was built in her reign in the late 200s, and it led straight to the temple of Bel, B-E-L, also known as Marduk or Baal, depending on your language. And the actual arch was built in the late 200s under her reign, but the temple of Bel was built in 32 AD, which is right around the time where Jesus Christ was crucified. Now, the cella, C-E-L-L-A, that is the Holy of Holies, the innermost part of the temple, and that's where they housed the deity. So the deity, they believed, actually lived there in the middle chamber, and that's where their sacrifice altar was. Now, the Romans called this god Bel, or Baal if you were Canaanite, or from the Mesopotamian influence, and he was thought to be the creator, the Lord and Master of the universe, the leader of all the gods. He was also called Zeus, Jupiter, Enlil, and Marduk, depending on what part of the countries you were from. So Zeus, Jupiter is the Greek-Roman thing. Enlil is down, I think, in the Sumerian, Babylonian, Persian bloodline, and Marduk is sort of over more towards Israel. And always hanging out with the sun god and the moon god, whose names are Aglabal or Aglabel, Yarhabal or Yarhabel, and this is the guy way back when that defeated Tiamat, and I want to remind you of Tiamat, who was you remember the whole thing where God was hovering over the waters in Genesis 1, and there was this big battle going on with the chaos and the Tiamat and the dragon that got chopped up? That's Tiamat. Yeah, there you go. Okay. But don't think that she just was faithful to this one god. No, no, no. We also had many other temples. It was a plethora, like a shopping mall of temples all along this wonderful main road of columns. Okay. And this was Bel-Shamin. Now, this was the god more of the Canaanites. So she wanted to keep them happy too. She sort of had like the Roman region and then the Canaanite region. And this temple was built in about 115. And this was built to Baal-Shamin, who is the storm god, the chaos of the seas. So you had to be really nice to him when you went sailing, or he would bring chaos and storms of the seas and bring up all that chaos. Didn't we learn about chaos, waters, Leviathan, Genesis? Yeah, we've been there. Eventually, it also became integrated with the sun god and also called Zeus Jupiter. Baal-Zephon. Now, is that funny where this is Zeus and Jupiter and this one's Zeus and Jupiter? Yes, it's kind of funny, isn't it? And it's also Baal-Zephon and Hadad, and also Baal-Zebub, which is Beelzebub. Now, Baal-Zebub is Lord of the Flies, and one of the reason while Baal-Shamin, our god here, was called Lord of the Flies with Beelzebub was because it loved human sacrifice so much that the flies would just kind of collect with all the dead bodies, so that was sort of a thing. Now, Baal-Haman, this was a Carthage god, so they had their Phoenician Carthage people that they had to keep happy too, and so they had their own temple to Baal-Haman, and this Baal-Haman was the king of all the gods, of course, although all of these seem to be kings of the gods. This one was the king of the gods too, and he was in charge of fertility and associated with Kronos, Dagon, the solar deity Saturn, Moloch, Baal-Kornanim, and he was two-horned. Loved those sacrifices, but he really liked sacrifice with fire. So not a lot of flies with this guy, but lots of fire. All right, then we've got a lot, because you can't forget the girls. So we've got a lot too. Asheroth, Atalath, Taisha, Aphrodite, Athena, Minerva, daughter of Allah. This girl, now these are all of her names in all of the different Mesopotamian languages that all sort of morphed together for a lot. Now, she had this little black stone that she carried around with her, and this will mean a whole lot more to you if you know anything about Islam. She also loved to run around inflicting blindness on people. Blindness. Gosh. Wouldn't it be weird to just be walking down the street on the road to Damascus near Syria and be blinded? It almost sounds familiar, doesn't it? Anyways, she loved sex, war, prosperity. She was a lioness. She loved to lie around naked with taming those lions. And she carries a sun disk. But not to forget the moon for Islam, she wears the moon on her head too. That good old crescent moon. The same kind of crescent moon that holds the sun with the bird guy. You know how they have the moon? Yeah, there you go. And finally, there was also a temple to Nabu. Now, this was Marduk's scribe. And remember, Marduk was also named Bel or Bile way up here at the top. And this Nabu was the bird dude. So he's also associated with Thoth, Apollo, Hermes, and Nimrod. So, are you confused yet? You should be. And do you know why you should be? Because of this.
I want to see why you kings and queens not attended place. All the gods stand there. Nice to meet you. Okay, good as my name. My name. I mean, personally, you was just a nature of my name. Oh yeah, come on down. Hey, tell me, baby, what's my name? Tell me, baby, they're all the same. Tell me, baby, what's my name? Tell me, baby, they're all the same. Yeah!
That's why. See you next time.
To be here with this beautiful thing.
Energy. 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 You cannot fuck with this. Energy. You cannot fuck with this energy. Love to all those in the flesh. All of those who are listening. Don't miss the message, judging me. You cannot fuck with this energy.